The morning light from Nexus Station's artificial sun filled the council chambers with its usual golden glow. Speaker Thisakar moved across the polished floor on 6 graceful legs, her crystalline form catching the light as she prepared for another routine day. The chambers buzzed with the typical sounds of galactic democracy, clicks, chirps, and electronic translations filling the air as representatives from 47 species gathered for their daily briefing. Thisakar touched the control panel with one delicate appendage, and holographic displays flickered to life around the circular chamber. Trade reports, border surveys, and diplomatic updates scrolled past in neat rows of data. Everything seemed perfectly normal for another day in the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. "Beginning standard briefing protocol," announced the station's AI in its emotionless voice. "All department heads, please submit your reports." One by one, the various alien representatives stood to deliver their updates. The beetle-like Veltar spoke about mining quotas. The gas-based Etherians reported on their energy research. The reptilian Saurians discussed their latest archaeological discoveries. Each species had something to contribute to the great tapestry of galactic civilization. But as the reports continued, Thisakar noticed something odd. She looked around the chamber, counting the familiar faces and forms. Something was missing, though she could not immediately place what it was. "Excuse me," she interrupted the Saurian representative mid-sentence. "Where are the human delegates today?" The chamber fell silent for a moment. Several aliens turned to look at the empty section where the humans usually sat. Their seats, simple, chairs designed for bipedal beings, stood vacant in the morning light. "The humans?" asked Counselor Vexhan, his tentacles curling with confusion. "I assumed they were simply late again. You know how unpredictable they can be." Thisakar felt a small flutter of concern, though she was not sure why. Humans had been part of the Council for over 50 years, ever since first contact had been established. They were reliable, if sometimes stubborn. It was unlike them to miss important meetings without notice. "Computer, locate human Ambassador Taiman," she commanded. "Ambassador Taiman's location is unknown. His personal communicator is offline," came the reply. "What about the other human representatives? All human council personnel are currently showing as offline or unavailable." The chamber erupted in a buzz of conversation. Some aliens seemed concerned, while others appeared annoyed by the disruption to their routine. The Krathgul warrior delegate growled something about human unreliability, while the peaceful Mirhai whispered among themselves in their musical language. Far across the galaxy, aboard the massive human starship Determination, Admiral Dongwu stood before a wall of monitors showing the progress of Operation Silent Dawn. Each screen displayed a different human colony, research station, or outpost scattered across council space. And one by one, those screens were going dark as the locations were evacuated. "Status report," Dongwu said calmly, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the magnitude of what was happening. Captain Bora approached with a datapad in her hands. "Sir, the last transport ship has just cleared Kepler Station. All personnel are accounted for. The station has been stripped of all useful equipment and materials. Any problems with the evacuation?" "None, sir. The other species barely noticed our departure. Most assumed we were conducting routine maintenance or crew rotations." Dongwu nodded. For months, human ships had been quietly moving through council space under the guise of normal operations. Supply runs became evacuation missions. Research expeditions turned into salvage operations. Personnel transfers became permanent relocations, all done so smoothly that no one suspected the humans were preparing to leave forever. Lieutenant Min-Su looked up from his station. "Admiral, all human technology has been secured or destroyed as planned. We've left nothing behind that could be reverse engineered." "Good. We cannot allow our innovations to be used against us or other species. The operation had been planned for over 2 years, ever since the Council's latest rejection of human proposals for dealing with threats from outside the galaxy. Time and again, humans had tried to warn about dangerous signals from dark space, about aggressive species moving toward Council borders, about the need for better defenses. But their concerns had been dismissed as paranoia or warmongering. The humans had offered to share advanced medical techniques that could save millions of lives. The council had politely declined, saying they preferred their traditional methods. Humans had proposed new agricultural systems that could feed entire worlds. The council had voted to stick with existing farming practices. Every human attempt to help had been met with suspicion or indifference. Dr. Haywan entered the bridge carrying a secured data case. As the fleet's lead xenobiologist, she had spent decades studying the various council species, learning their strengths and weaknesses, their cultures and biology. Her research had been intended to foster better cooperation and understanding. Now it would serve a different purpose. "All the biological data has been secured, Admiral," she reported. "If we encounter these species again, we'll know how to interact with them safely, or defend against them if necessary," Dongwu added grimly. The evacuation had not been easy. Many humans had lived their entire lives in council space, working alongside alien colleagues, forming friendships that transcended species barriers. Leaving behind everything they had built was painful. But the pattern of rejection had become too clear to ignore. Back on Nexus Station, Thysakar was growing more concerned about the missing humans. She dispatched security teams to check the human quarters and offices, but they found only empty rooms, not abandoned, empty. The humans had taken everything with them, leaving no personal belongings, no equipment, no trace that they had ever been there. "This is most unusual," she muttered to herself. Humans are emotional creatures. If they were angry or upset, they would have said something. They would have made speeches or demands. This silence is disturbing. What Thysakar did not know was that the humans had been saying something for years. They had made speeches about coming dangers. They had submitted detailed reports about threats to galactic security. They had offered solutions to problems that other species refused to acknowledge even existed. But their words had fallen on deaf ears, their warnings dismissed as the paranoid fantasies of a young, aggressive species. The final phase of Operation Silent Dawn was the most delicate. Human deep space monitoring stations had to be evacuated without alerting the automated systems that reported to Council headquarters. These stations had been humanity's gift to galactic security, providing early warning of potential threats from the dark regions between spiral arms. Commander Inho supervised the shutdown of the last monitoring station. "All personnel evacuated," he reported to the fleet. "Station is going offline in 3 minutes." As the station's lights dimmed and its sensors went dark, a crucial piece of the galaxy's defense network disappeared. The humans had designed these stations to be irreplaceable, using quantum lock technology that would destroy itself if tampered with by unauthorized personnel. Without human maintenance and oversight, the stations would become useless within months. The evacuation fleet regrouped at the edge of Council space, hundreds of ships carrying every human from the inner galaxy. They had salvaged what they could, destroyed what might be dangerous in the wrong hands, and prepared for a journey into the unknown. Admiral Dongwu looked at the star charts showing their destination, the void between spiral arms where no sane species would try to establish colonies. It would be dangerous, perhaps impossible, but humans had always specialized in making the impossible work. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. "Take us into the dark." Behind them, the Council continued its daily business, still unaware that humanity had just walked away from galactic civilization forever. The empty chairs in the Council chambers were the only sign that something had changed. Soon, even those would be forgotten as other concerns took priority. But the consequences of humanity's silent departure would not remain hidden for long. 3 months had passed since the humans stopped coming to Council meetings. At first, nobody really cared. The daily business of governing 47 different species continued as usual. Trade agreements were signed, border disputes were settled, and scientific discoveries were shared. Life in the galaxy went on. But slowly, small problems began to appear. The first sign of trouble came from the Veltar Mining Federation. Their trade representative, a large beetle-like creature named Zakth, approached Speaker Thysakar after a routine session with obvious concern, written across his chitinous features. "Honored Speaker," he clicked in his native language, which the translation system converted to Standard Galactic. "We have encountered a problem with our mining operations." What kind of problem? Thysakar asked, though she was only half listening. As she reviewed other reports, the rare earth elements from Sector 7 have not arrived. Our human suppliers were supposed to deliver them last month, but their ships never came. We sent messages but received no response. Thysakar looked up with interest. Human suppliers? I thought the Veltar handled their own mining. Not for the deep core extractions, Zakth explained. Human drilling technology was much more efficient than ours. They could reach mineral deposits that we cannot access. Without their deliveries, our manufacturing has slowed by 30%. This was news to Thysakar. She had not realized how much the Veltar depended on human mining operations. But surely this was just a temporary delay. Perhaps the humans were having technical difficulties or dealing with internal problems. I will look into this matter, she promised, though she was not sure how to contact humans who seemed to have vanished completely. The second problem came from an unexpected source. The Jektari, a species of crystalline beings who prided themselves on mathematical precision, reported that their manufacturing efficiency had dropped significantly over the past month. Our production algorithms are not working correctly, explained their representative, a shimmering blue crystal formation that spoke through harmonic vibrations. The optimization routines that increased our output by 200% have begun to fail. What kind of optimization routines? Thysakar asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. They were developed in partnership with human mathematicians, the Jektari admitted. We thought they were simple programs, but apparently they require constant updates and adjustments that we do not understand. More human involvement that nobody had fully appreciated. Thysakar was beginning to see a pattern, and she did not like where it was leading. The third incident was more serious. The peaceful Mirhai, a species of plant-like beings who lived on agricultural worlds, sent an emergency message to the Council. Their crops were failing across multiple star systems, and they faced the possibility of widespread famine within 6 months. Our yields have dropped by 70%, their ambassador reported through a translation device, since the Mirhai communicated through chemical signals. The enhanced growing techniques that tripled our food production are no longer working. The human agricultural specialists who developed these methods are not responding to our calls for help. Thysakar felt a cold chill run through her crystalline form. Food shortages could destabilize entire regions of the galaxy. If multiple species were facing similar problems, she ordered a comprehensive investigation into all human-involved projects and partnerships. What she discovered shocked her to the core. Humans had been quietly involved in nearly every aspect of Council civilization. They had provided technological solutions, scientific innovations, and practical expertise that other species had come to depend on without even realizing it. And now, all of that support had vanished overnight. The investigation team found Ambassador Taemin's abandoned office in the diplomatic quarter of Nexus Station. Unlike the human quarters they had checked before, this office contained something, a single data pad sitting on the otherwise empty desk. The pad contained Taemin's personal logs from the past 10 years of his service as humanity's chief representative to the Council. As Thysakar read through the entries, she began to understand the true scope of what had happened. Day 2047 of service. Read one entry. Presented proposal for improved medical research sharing. Council voted to table the matter indefinitely. The Saurian delegate made several comments about human medical practices being too aggressive for civilized species. Day 2901 of service. Read another. Warned Council about unusual energy readings from the Andromeda Gap. Provided detailed sensor data showing possible hostile ship movements. Proposal for joint investigation was rejected 31 votes to 16. Several delegates suggested humans were seeing threats that do not exist. Day 3156 of service. Offered to share new defensive technologies developed by human military research. Council expressed concern about human militaristic tendencies and voted to decline the offer. The Etherian delegate stated that, Peaceful species have no need for such weapons. Page after page of similar entries. Proposals rejected, warnings ignored, offers of help politely declined. The pattern was clear. The Council had systematically shut out human contributions to galactic civilization, while simultaneously benefiting from human expertise behind the scenes. Thissakar realized that humans had been providing essential services through private contracts and individual agreements, working around the Council's official rejection of their ideas. When the Council would not accept human agricultural technology through official channels, humans had partnered directly with species like the Mirhai. When the Council rejected human medical advances, humans had shared their knowledge through research exchanges with individual scientists. The humans had built a shadow network of cooperation that kept galactic civilization running smoothly, even while the Council officially kept them at arm's length. And now that network was gone. Dr. Yu Jin had been the lead engineer for humanity's technological integration projects across Council space. Her personal notes, found in a secured file on the abandoned datapad, revealed the true extent of human involvement in galactic infrastructure. Most Council species do not realize that their communication networks rely on human-designed routing protocols, she had written. The quantum relay stations that connect distant worlds use algorithms that I developed personally. Without regular maintenance and updates, message transmission will slow by 90% within 6 months. The environmental systems on 17 different space stations use human atmospheric processors. I designed them to be self-maintaining for emergency situations, but they require quarterly recalibration. If nobody performs this maintenance, life support will begin failing. The defensive grid protecting the inner worlds relies on human-built sensor arrays. We volunteered to maintain these systems as our contribution to galactic security. The Biao, other species assumed the systems were automatic, but they actually require constant human oversight. As Thissakar read through more and more evidence of human integration into galactic society, she felt a growing sense of dread. How many critical systems were failing right now because their human operators had disappeared? How many disasters were building quietly in the background, waiting to explode? She called an emergency session of the full Council. Representatives from all 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sound as they debated what to do about the human situation. We must find them, declared the Krathgul war chief. If they have taken essential technology with them, this could be considered an act of theft. Theft? Asked the gentle Mirhai ambassador. How can they steal their own inventions? By removing them without permission from the Council, the Krathgul replied. These technologies were developed for the benefit of all species. Actually, Thissakar said quietly, my research shows that humans developed these technologies with their own resources, then offered to share them with us. We often rejected their offers through official channels. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably, perhaps remembering their own votes against human proposals. The question is not whether they had the right to leave, Thissakar continued. The question is what we do now that they are gone. Councillor Vexhan, who had often been critical of human involvement in Council affairs, spoke up nervously. Surely we can manage without them. We survived for millions of years before humans joined galactic civilization. Did we? Asked Thissakar. Or did we simply stagnate? The uncomfortable silence that followed suggested that many delegates were thinking the same thing. The past 50 years had seen unprecedented growth and progress in galactic civilization. New technologies improve living standards, better communication between species, enhanced defenses against external threats. Much of that progress had human fingerprints all over it. As the Council session ended without any clear decisions, Thissakar returned to her private chambers to study the data more carefully. The more she learned, the more she realized that humanity's departure was not just an inconvenience. It was a catastrophe waiting to happen. And somewhere in the dark space between the spiral arms, the humans were probably counting on exactly that realization. 6 months after the humans disappeared, the galaxy was falling apart. The crisis began on the agricultural world of Mir-High Prime, where millions of plant beings were slowly starving. The enhanced crops that had fed their expanding population for decades were dying in the fields. Without human agricultural specialists to maintain the soil treatment systems, the carefully balanced ecosystem was collapsing. Ambassador Lilith of the Mir-High stood before the emergency council session, her normally vibrant green form now faded and drooping. Through her chemical translator, her distress was clear to all present. "Our people are dying," she said simply. "The young sprouts are the first to suffer. We estimate that without immediate intervention, 60% of our population will perish within the year." The chamber erupted in horrified gasps and clicks from various species. The Mir-High had been one of the most prosperous civilizations in the galaxy, their peaceful nature and abundant food production making them valuable allies to many worlds. "What kind of intervention do you need?" asked Speaker Thisakar, though she suspected the answer would be problematic. "We need the soil recalibration procedures that Professor Yesol developed for us," Lilith replied. "Without her guidance, we cannot restore the mineral balance that our enhanced crops require." Professor Yesol was human, Thisakar stated unnecessarily. "Yes. She worked with our scientists for 15 years, developing techniques that transformed our world from a barely habitable planet into a garden paradise. But we never fully understood the underlying science. We trusted her expertise." The Mir-High were not alone. Across the galaxy, other species were discovering just how much they had relied on human knowledge and support. The crystalline Jektari faced manufacturing breakdowns that threatened their entire economy. The gas-based Etherians found their energy research projects grinding to a halt without human mathematical insights. Most alarming was the situation with the warlike Krathgul. Their weapon systems, enhanced with human technology over the past decade, were beginning to malfunction. Without proper maintenance, their military might was evaporating just when they needed it most. General Thokvar of the Krathgul military presented his report with barely controlled rage. His massive, scaled form towered over the other delegates as he spoke through clenched teeth. "Our plasma cannons are operating at 60% efficiency," he growled. "Our shield generators are failing at random intervals. Our targeting systems are producing errors that make our weapons as dangerous to us as to any enemy." "Can your own engineers not repair these systems?" asked Counselor Vexhan. "Human technology is unlike anything we have seen," Thokvar admitted reluctantly. "They built devices that our best minds cannot understand, let alone repair. We thought we were purchasing simple weapons upgrades. Instead, we became dependent on human expertise." The situation was even worse than most delegates realized. Commander Inho had designed the Krathgul weapon modifications with built-in security features that would cause them to degrade without proper maintenance codes. The same safeguards existed in human technology throughout the galaxy, not out of malice, but as a reasonable precaution against their innovations being turned against Earth or other species. But the most terrifying discovery came from the Outer Rim territories. The deep space monitoring stations that provided early warning of external threats had gone completely dark. Without human oversight, the sophisticated sensor networks had shut down one by one. "We are flying blind," reported Admiral Zeftor, the Council's military commander. "For the first time in 50 years, we have no advance warning of potential threats from outside our borders." "Surely our own sensor technology can fill this gap," suggested the Etherian representative. "Our sensors have a range of 12 light-years," Zeftor replied grimly. "The human stations could detect movement from over 200 light-years away. The difference between 12 and 200 light-years is the difference between having days to prepare for an attack and having minutes." The Council was beginning to understand that they had not simply lost human cooperation, they had lost capabilities that no other species possessed. The humans had been so far ahead in certain fields that their departure left gaps that could not be easily filled. Dr. Jehoon's medical research facility on Nexus Station stood empty, its advanced laboratories sealed and abandoned. The human doctor had been working on treatments for genetic diseases that affected multiple council species, but his research had died with his departure. When the Nithrak plague began spreading through the outer colonies, the council discovered just how much they had depended on human medical expertise. The disease, a rapidly mutating virus that jumped between species, had appeared several times before over the past decades. Each time, Dr. Jae-hoon had developed effective treatments within weeks. Now, with Jae-hoon gone, the plague spread unchecked. The Council's own medical experts struggled to understand the virus, let alone stop it. Traditional treatments that worked on individual species proved useless against a pathogen that adapted to each new host. We estimate the plague will reach the core worlds within 3 months, reported Dr. Sithka, the Council's chief medical officer. Without human antiviral techniques, we have no effective response. The investigation into humanity's departure had uncovered mountains of evidence showing systematic discrimination against human proposals and ideas. The team leader, a former human diplomat named Sun Ho, had left behind a comprehensive report documenting decades of bias and rejection. The pattern is undeniable, Thesakar announced to the Council after reviewing Sun Ho's findings. We consistently voted against human initiatives, often without proper consideration of their merits. We treated human warnings as paranoia, and human offers of help as attempts to gain power over other species. The report made for uncomfortable reading. Time after time, humans had presented solutions to problems that the Council refused to acknowledge existed. They had warned about environmental disasters that other species ignored until it was too late. They had offered medical advances that could have saved millions of lives, only to be told that their methods were too aggressive or inappropriate. Why did they not complain more forcefully? Asked Councillor Vexhan. If they disagreed with our decisions, they should have made their objections clear. They did, Thesakar replied, holding up a data pad filled with formal protests and detailed arguments. For 50 years they filed objections to our votes. They presented alternative proposals. They requested hearings and reviews. We ignored all of it. The evidence was overwhelming. The humans had not left in a fit of anger or wounded pride. They had left because they had tried everything else and nothing had worked. The Council had made it clear through decades of actions that human contributions were not wanted or valued. But the final straw appeared to have been the Council's response to human warnings about threats from dark space. Long-range sensors had detected unusual energy signatures moving toward the galaxy's outer rim. The humans had requested permission to investigate, offering to use their advanced ships and deep space expertise. The Council had voted to ignore the warnings, dismissing them as human paranoia about imaginary threats. Some delegates had even suggested that the humans were fabricating the sensor readings to justify military expansion. Now, with the human monitoring stations offline, those same energy signatures were getting closer to populated worlds. And without human deep space capabilities, the Council had no way to investigate or prepare for whatever was coming. The economic collapse was accelerating. Supply chains that had operated smoothly for decades were breaking down as human manufactured. Components ran out. Communication networks were slowing as human-designed routing systems failed. Transportation systems were becoming unreliable as human navigation technology degraded. Even worse, attempts to reverse engineer abandoned human equipment were proving disastrous. Engineer Yunji had implemented quantum-locked security protocols. In most human technology, when unauthorized personnel tried to access the systems, they simply destroyed themselves rather than reveal their secrets. We have lost 17 research facilities trying to decode human technology, reported the Council's chief scientist. Each attempt results in complete destruction of the equipment we are trying to study. The humans had planned for this contingency. They had never intended their technology to be used without their direct involvement and consent. Every major human innovation contained safeguards that made it impossible for other species to simply take over when the humans were gone. Speaker Thesakar stood before her private quarters viewing port, looking out at the stars and contemplating the magnitude of the disaster unfolding around them. 6 months ago, the galaxy had seemed stable and prosperous. Now multiple civilizations teetered on the edge of collapse. The humans had not destroyed anything when they left. They had not sabotaged systems or launched attacks. They had simply withdrawn their support and expertise, leaving other species to manage on their own. The problem was that other species could not manage on their own. Somewhere along the way, galactic civilization had become dependent on human knowledge and capabilities that no one else fully understood. And in the dark, space between spiral arms. 1 year had passed since the humans vanished, and the Galactic Council was facing the worst crisis in its history. 3 member species were on the verge of total collapse. The Mir-High population had dropped by 40% due to crop failures. The Krathgul military was practically defenseless with their broken weapons. The Nithrak plague continued to spread unchecked through the outer worlds. Speaker Thysekar no longer slept peacefully in her crystalline chambers. Every day brought new reports of disasters, system failures, and desperate pleas for help that she could not provide. The golden age of galactic cooperation was ending in chaos and suffering. "We must find them," she announced to the emergency council session. "Whatever the cost, we must locate the humans and negotiate their return." The chamber buzzed with agreement from species facing extinction, but finding humans who clearly did not want to be found would not be easy. Admiral Zeftor, the council's military commander, had been searching for human settlements for months using every sensor array and scout ship at his disposal. His reports grew more puzzling each time. "We have checked every world that humans were known to have visited," he reported to the council. "We found abandoned mining sites, empty research stations, and cleared colony locations, but no signs of where they went." "They cannot have simply vanished," insisted Councillor Vexhan. "Millions of humans and thousands of ships do not disappear without leaving traces." "Actually, they can," replied Dr. Sithka, who had been studying human capabilities. "Human stealth technology is far more advanced than we realized. They have been developing cloaking methods and sensor blocking techniques that we cannot detect with our equipment." The search had revealed just how little the Council truly knew about human civilization. For 50 years, humans had been present at council meetings, participating in trade agreements and cooperating in scientific research. But they had also been conducting their own secret projects and developing technologies that other species never suspected existed. Captain Kyung-ho had been humanity's chief navigator during their time in council space. His job had been to map safe hyperspace routes between human colonies and trading partners. What nobody realized was that he had also been systematically erasing all records of human exploration data from council databases. The humans were more careful about operational security than we ever imagined, Admiral Zeftor admitted reluctantly. They shared scientific knowledge freely, but they kept strategic information completely secret. We have no idea how far their civilization extended beyond what they showed us officially. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A deep space probe, launched years earlier to study cosmic radiation patterns, detected unusual energy signatures in the void between spiral arms. The probe had been programmed to ignore that region, since no known civilization could survive in such a hostile environment. But the energy readings were clearly artificial, too regular and organized to be natural phenomena. Something was out there in the cosmic wasteland, something that was generating power on a massive scale. "The readings are definitely technological," reported the probe's data analysis team. "Multiple fusion reactors, industrial facilities, and what appear to be large-scale manufacturing operations." "In the void between spiral arms?" asked Thysekar in disbelief. "That region has no stars, no planets, no resources. How could anyone build anything there?" "Unknown," came the reply. "But the energy output suggests a civilization larger than most of our member species." The Council authorized an expedition to investigate. Admiral Zeftor personally commanded the most advanced exploration fleet they could assemble, equipped with long-range sensors and diplomatic communication systems. If humans were somehow surviving in the void, the Council would find them and beg for their help. The journey into dark space was terrifying for beings accustomed to the warmth and light of stellar neighborhoods. The void stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with deadly radiation and gravitational anomalies that could destroy unwary ships. The fleet's navigational computers struggled to maintain course without familiar star patterns to guide them. But as they approached the source of the energy signatures, the fleet's sensors began picking up impossible readings. Massive structures, floating in the emptiness, connected by streams of flowing energy that seemed to harvest power directly from the cosmic background radiation. By the ancient spirits, whispered Zeftor's aide, a young officer who had never seen anything like the installation spread before them. How is this possible? The structures defied everything the Council thought they knew about space colonization. Enormous spherical habitats, each one larger than most space stations, clustered around what appeared to be artificial suns. Controlled fusion reactions that provided light and heat in the endless darkness. Mining operations stripped rare elements from wandering asteroids and interstellar dust clouds. Manufacturing facilities produced goods using resources that the Council had never imagined could be harvested from empty space. Entire cities existed inside hollowed-out planetoids that had been converted into mobile worlds. These are not survival shelters, Zeftor realized as his fleet approached the nearest installation. This is a thriving civilization. The humans had done more than survive in the void. They had transformed the galaxy's most hostile region into their new home. Without the limitations imposed by planetary environments or the need to accommodate other species' requirements, human engineering had advanced at an incredible pace. Captain So Young had led the advance teams that scouted potential locations in the void while the evacuation was still being planned. Her reports transmitted back to the fleet had described the region as barely habitable with tremendous effort and sacrifice. But that had been part of the deception. Humans had been secretly developing void colonization technology for decades, using it as a backup plan in case their relationship with the Council deteriorated beyond repair. The hostile environment that other species saw as impossible to inhabit was, to human engineers, simply another technical challenge to be overcome. The Council fleet approached the largest installation, a massive sphere that appeared to house millions of inhabitants. Their attempts to communicate were initially ignored, as if the humans were pretending the aliens did not exist. Finally, after hours of broadcasting diplomatic messages on every frequency, they received a response. The voice that answered was calm, professional, and utterly without warmth. This is Admiral Seung Min of the Independent Human Coalition. You are in violation of our territorial space. State your business or depart immediately. Independent Human Coalition? Zeftor asked, his communications officer in confusion. Admiral Seung Min, this is Admiral Zeftor of the Galactic Council Exploration Fleet. We request permission to meet with human leadership to discuss critical matters affecting all species in the galaxy. There was a long pause before the response came. The Galactic Council has no authority in this region. If you have business with the Independent Human Coalition, you may present your request to our diplomatic representative, but understand that we are under no obligation to assist you. The formality of the response was chilling. These were the same humans who had sat in council chambers for 50 years, working cooperatively with alien species and offering help wherever needed. But their tone now suggested that those days of cooperation were permanently over. A smaller human ship approached the Council fleet, sleek, fast, and obviously built for deep space operations. Its design was unlike anything in the Council databases, incorporating technologies that seemed almost magical in their efficiency. Admiral Dong Wu appeared on the communication screen, his face older and more weathered than when he had overseen the evacuation. Behind him, the bridge of his ship showed equipment and displays that were clearly generations ahead of Council technology. Admiral Zeftor, he said with polite coldness, I am surprised to see Council ships venture this far from civilized space. What brings you to the void? Admiral Dongwu, I am authorized by Speaker Thesakar and the full Council to negotiate for the return of human cooperation with galactic civilization. Our situation has become desperate. Your situation, Dongwu replied with a slight smile, is of your own making. Yes, Zeftor admitted, swallowing his pride. We acknowledge that mistakes were made. We are prepared to offer significant concessions to restore our partnership. What kind of concessions? Full Council membership with veto power over any decision affecting human interests. Guaranteed representation in all major committees. Formal apologies for past discrimination. Whatever it takes to repair our relationship. Dongwu was quiet. For a long moment, his expression unreadable. Behind him, other humans worked at their stations with casual efficiency, as if visiting council delegations were routine occurrences. "I will convey your request to our leadership," he said finally. "But you should understand that the humans who left council space no longer exist. We are not the same people who once sought your acceptance and approval." "What do you mean?" "We mean," came a new voice as another figure stepped into view, "that we have learned the lesson you taught us." Admiral Wu Jin looked directly at Zeftor, with eyes that held no hostility but also no warmth. Speaker Thisakar stood on the observation deck of the Council flagship Unity, staring out at the impossible sight before her. The massive human installation, known as New Terra Station, floated in the cosmic void like a small sun, its artificial light warming the darkness between spiral arms. Smaller habitats and industrial complexes stretched in all directions, connected by streams of energy and flotillas of ships that moved with purpose through the emptiness. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she had ever seen. "They built all of this in just over a year," she whispered to Admiral Zeftor, who stood beside her watching the human fleet maneuver around their new home. "More than built it," he replied grimly. "They've created a civilization that puts our greatest achievements to shame." The diplomatic mission to the Void had taken 3 months to arrange. The humans had initially refused all contact, then agreed to limited discussions, and finally permitted a small council delegation to visit New Terra Station. But their conditions had been strict: no weapons, no recording devices, and no attempts to analyze human technology. The council had agreed to everything because they had no choice. The galaxy was dying without human support, and this might be their only chance to repair the relationship they had destroyed through decades of prejudice and ignorance. Admiral Dongwu met them at the station's docking bay, flanked by other human officers whose faces showed polite indifference to their former galactic partners. The humans wore uniforms that Thisakar did not recognize, deep blue with silver trim and insignia that belonged to no government in the council databases. "Welcome to New Terra Station," Dongwu said formally. "I trust your journey was not too difficult." "Admiral Dongwu," Thisakar replied, trying to project confidence she did not feel. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "The decision was not unanimous," he said, as he led them through corridors that hummed with advanced technology. "Many of our people believe that the Council forfeited any right to human assistance when you made your position clear through decades of rejection and discrimination." The station's interior was a marvel of engineering that made Council architecture look primitive by comparison. The corridors were spacious and comfortable, designed for human proportions but accommodating to visitors of different sizes. Holographic displays showed real-time data from across the human void colonies, painting a picture of a civilization that was not just surviving, but thriving in conditions that other species considered impossible. They passed through sections of the station where human children played in parks filled with earth plants, where scientists worked in laboratories that gleamed with equipment decades ahead of anything in council space, where engineers designed ships that could harvest energy from cosmic phenomena and navigate the treacherous currents of deep space. "How many of you are there?" asked Admiral Zeftor, clearly awed by the scale of what he was seeing. "All of us," replied a new voice. Dr. Heywan approached from a side corridor, carrying a datapad and wearing the casual clothes of someone who had been working in her laboratory. "Every human who lived in council space is now part of the Independent Human Coalition." "Dr. Heywan," Thisakar said with genuine pleasure, "it is good to see you again." "Is it?" the scientist asked with a slight smile. "You never seemed particularly interested in my research when I was presenting it to the council." The comment stung because it was true. Thisakar remembered Dr. Heywan's presentations about interspecies medical cooperation, innovative treatments that could benefit multiple civilizations, and warnings about potential biological threats from outside the galaxy. The council had politely listened and then voted to pursue more traditional approaches. They were escorted to a conference room with a spectacular view of the void installations. Through the transparent walls they could see human ships arriving from distant expeditions, their holds filled with rare materials and scientific data gathered from regions no other species had ever explored. The human delegation included faces that were familiar from decades of council meetings, but the atmosphere was completely different. There was no eagerness to please, no desperate attempts to gain acceptance or approval. These humans had found something more valuable than the council's friendship. They had found their independence. "Let us be direct," said Admiral Dongwu as they took their seats around a circular table. "We know why you are here. Your civilization is collapsing without human support, and you want us to return and fix the problems you cannot solve." "Yes," Tisakar admitted, deciding that honesty was their only hope. "We were wrong about many things. We failed to appreciate human contributions to galactic society. We rejected offers of cooperation that could have benefited everyone. We ignored warnings that proved accurate. We ask for your forgiveness and your help." Dr. Ji-hoon, who had once directed human research initiatives within the council framework, leaned forward with a datapad in his hands. "Do you know what we have accomplished in the 16 months since leaving council space?" He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the table with images and data streams. "We have developed faster-than-light communication that allows instant contact across galactic distances. We have created manufacturing systems that can build complex equipment from raw cosmic dust. We have discovered energy sources that make stellar fusion look primitive." The display showed technological marvels that seemed almost magical to the council representatives. Ships that could travel between galaxies, habitats that could support millions of people using nothing but the energy of empty space, weapons that could destroy entire fleets with precision strikes that left nearby friendly forces completely unharmed. "We have also made contact with 17 different species from outside our galaxy," Dr. Ji-hoon continued casually, as if this were not the most shocking news in the history of galactic civilization. "Some of them are friendly, others are not, outside." "The galaxy?" Zeftor asked in amazement. "That should be impossible." "It is impossible using council technology," agreed Dr. Haewon, "but humans have moved beyond those limitations. The implications were staggering. While the council had been struggling with basic infrastructure failures, humans had achieved technological advances that opened up entirely new possibilities for civilization. They had not simply survived their exile, they had used it as an opportunity to leap centuries ahead in their development. "This is what happens," explained Admiral Dongwu, "when humans are free to innovate without having to accommodate the limitations and prejudices of other species. When we do not have to waste time arguing with committees who refuse to acknowledge obvious problems. When we can focus our efforts on solutions rather than politics." The message was clear. Human exile had not been a punishment but a liberation. "We understand that you have achieved incredible things," Thesakar said carefully. "But surely there is still value in cooperation between species. The diversity of perspectives and capabilities that comes from working together." "Is there?" asked Dr. Nara, who had apparently become humanity's chief diplomatic representative. "For 50 years we offered to share our perspectives and capabilities with the council. You consistently rejected those offers. You taught us that cooperation requires mutual respect and trust, which you were unwilling to provide. We were wrong," Tisakar admitted again. "We let fear and prejudice cloud our judgment. We failed to recognize the value of human contributions until it was too late." "Yes, you did," Nara agreed without emotion. "And now you face the consequences of those decisions." The negotiation that followed was the most humbling experience in Thisakar's long career. The humans were not cruel or vindictive, but they were absolutely clear about the new reality. They would provide limited assistance to prevent the worst disasters, medical aid for the plague, emergency food supplies for the starving Mirhai, basic maintenance information to keep critical systems functioning. But they would never again integrate into council society or submit to council authority. The Independent Human Coalition was exactly that, independent. They would maintain diplomatic relations with individual species that proved trustworthy, but the days of human participation in galactic government were over forever. "We will help you survive," Nara explained as the agreement was finalized, "but we will not help you thrive. You rejected our partnership when times were good. You cannot expect to reclaim it now that times are difficult. The terms were painful but fair. Humans would share enough knowledge to prevent civilizational collapse, but not enough to restore the Council's former prosperity. They would provide emergency assistance during crises, but not the ongoing support that had once made galactic civilization run smoothly. Most importantly, they would maintain their own defenses and handle their own exploration of threats from outside the galaxy. The Council would be informed of major dangers, but they would be expected to deal with those threats using their own resources. "We are no longer your guardians," Admiral Dongwu said as the Council delegation prepared to depart. "We are no longer your technological support system. We are no longer your early warning network. You are on your own, just as you always claimed you wanted to be." As Thisakar looked back at New Terra Station through the viewport of the departing Council ship,